When I posted this image on my community tab and I said I was going to make a video about one of the most evil companies in the world and the worst thing they do, you had already guessed which company I'm referring to just by looking at the logo. This is one of the most recognizable brands in the world, and it belongs to one of the most powerful companies ever created. I am, of course, talking about McDonald's. Now, if I were to ask you, according to you, what's the worst thing that they do? Now, if you were a health conscious person, not necessarily a vegan, but like you're into fitness and that sort of stuff, you would say, well, the worst thing they do is that they sell you this junk food that barely even qualifies as food. It's loaded with sodium and sugar and who knows what chemicals are in there. And it's terrible for your health and your overall well-being. And this is, and it is, it's really perverse and it's evil and it's terrible that they do this. But now, if you are a vegan, you might answer something like, well, it's the animal abuse of this thing. They found this horrible abuse, exploitation, torture, and murder of different animals, and that's what they're selling you. They're selling you the corpses and the secretions of these innocent sentient beings, and that's the worst thing that they do. And I agree, of course. Me being a vegan, well, obviously to me that's absolutely disgusting, absolutely evil and rotten. But that's just part one of the worst thing they do. Because here's the icing on the non-vegan cake of this thing. Not only do they use, abuse, exploit, torture, and murder the most vulnerable beings on this planet, but who do they market this thing to? Who do they market? Who is their intended target demographic? The most vulnerable of the humans. Children. Innocent children who don't know any better. Their parents clueless to the whole thing. And it's not really, I wouldn't really blame the parents, especially if you're from my generation. Back in the day, when there was even less information than there is now, and companies got away with more sketchy and shady stuff, it's not really their fault that they were taking you to this place. They were as much of a victim as we were as kids. And we're all victims of this horrible system that is in place, this cycle of violence and abuse. And to me, that's the worst thing, that they not only do they participate in this horrible massacre, but that they make not only a profit out of it, but they market it as this fun thing for children, indoctrinating you, indoctrinating your kids, indoctrinating you, and even me at some point. I was a kid in the late 80s, early 90s, and McDonald's was like the thing. It was like the place to be. And wow, what a scam, really. And we were all being indoctrinated. We're all being fed this horrible massacre and putting this poison into our bodies and into our minds. And they programmed us to crave for their product. And no wonder we have adults today who refuse to go vegan, refuse to quote unquote give up meat and cheese and dairy because it's not possible, it's not practicable. Of course, it's not going to be possible or practicable when you've been pumped full of this thing and you're indoctrinated into thinking that this is actually good or that because it tastes good, then that justifies consuming it. You've been programmed into normalizing this horrible hell on earth. And what a cycle of violence and greed and just overall malice, really. It's malicious intent to the highest degree. They are essentially killing billions and trillions by now of animals. They are making you unhealthy, slowly killing you in the process, and killing the planet. And everyone's fine with it because it's bright, it's colorful, it's fun, so it's okay. It comes in a nice package, so it's okay. Absolutely deplorable. And the tactics that they use to sell their stuff are just as much as evil as selling of the stuff itself, because they came up with these happy meals with toys in them. And of course, what kid isn't going to want toys and bright and colorful stuff? And of course, they did these movie tie-ins. Every time a kids movie would come out, they would do the toy line for that movie. Disney movies were like at the highest of highs in like the late 80s to mid 90s. Any movie that Disney would release, it would be a smash hit, and kids went crazy with these figurines and toys and stuff. And McDonald's provided this stuff, so you wanted to go there and collect the whole thing. So it's ridiculous. They even had a clothing line for kids at some point named McKids. And they also had a video game, a Nintendo video game called McKids. And that's what they were turning us into. That's what we were to them. We were McKids. And bloody hell. Think about it. It was so perverse. And you know what they did? They were so powerful. There was this movie in the 80s called Mac and Me. It was a cheap E.T. knockoff. And the alien was called Mac. I mean, how more obvious do you want to be? And they actually go to McDonald's, and there's like a dance number and everything, and the alien is disguised as a teddy bear or whatever, and starts dancing and stuff. Oh man, that really happened. And there was this movie, Richie Rich, with Macaulay Culkin, and one of the scenes shows that in the rich mansion they had this McDonald's restaurant inside the house. So the kid had a McDonald's all to himself 24/7. And as kids, we would watch this film and think, whoa, that's the dream. What kid doesn't want a McDonald's inside their house? They've been so ingrained in our culture and in our lives that even economy magazines, there's like this magazine called The Economist. It's a publication that since 1986 they've been doing this Big Mac index. And what they do is they measure each country's economic strength, I guess, uh, by the price of the Big Mac in said countries. That's how crazy this is. That there can be something as a Big Mac index. That's how big this company is, that they have locations all over the world. So that this index, I mean, it's not an official thing, but it is. And that's what they call it. And even, and I think this term has been retired because some people thought it was derogative and stuff like that, and the meaning. But entry level jobs with like long hours and low pay were known as McJobs. That's another thing, like the Mac thing is so ingrained in our lives, you know? This thing is so ever present everywhere. Even in the very popular show Grey's Anatomy, or as it should be known, Horny Doctors, the series, these two characters were were nicknamed by the female residents or whatever. They were nicknamed Dr. McDreamy and McSteamy. This Mac thing is everywhere, you know. And yes, that McSteamy guy, by the way, is Nate's dad in Euphoria, a show that I watch for the plot, of course, and by the plot I mean Sydney Sweeney's breasts. This Mac thing is everywhere. So, you know, it's so ridiculous. If you want to know, if you want a glimpse of how powerful they are, back in 1989, a Batman movie came up. This Batman movie, directed by Tim Burton, and as we know, Tim Burton is probably not the most kid-friendly director. But anyway, they did this Batman thing. It was a smash hit. Then he directed the sequel, Batman Returns, and this one was so dark and so greedy and stuff that McDonald's cut ties with Warner Brothers because they couldn't do a movie tie-in with a toy line for the Happy Meals. Because how do you market these things to kids? Look at him, that's the penguin. How do you market these things? So they cut ties with Warner Brothers, and then Warner fired Tim Burton from the franchise. That's how powerful these McDonald's guys are. They fired Tim Burton from Batman because McDonald's couldn't sell toys to kids because of his style of filmmaking not being kids friendly enough. And they brought in another director who then directed like the third film, which of course was more kid friendly, more bright and colorful. And they resumed their partnership with McDonald's, of course. And then the fourth film was a complete disaster. It's one of those movies that is so bad it's good, you know, but it's just terrible. And it killed the franchise. So McDonald's killed a Batman franchise. That's how powerful they are. So I have a question for the people in the audience and in the comment section. If this corporation were to announce today that they're going to shift to a plant-based model, and that they're going to achieve 50% of their menu is going to be plant-based and vegan friendly by the year, let's say 2026, and by the year 2030 it's going to be 100% plant-based, vegan, completely vegan. Now, will you be on board with that? will you allow this thing to happen, or would you not give them that benefit, and you would call for their bankruptcy anyway? Because here's what I think. The state things are in, if you tell me, hey, what do you prefer? You prefer to for McDonald's to go bankrupt right now and cease to exist and cease their business, or do you prefer to give them the opportunity to go plant-based and stuff? If I'm going by how they are now, I want them to go away. I want them to completely disappear as soon as possible. But if they announce that they're going to go plant-based and fully vegan within the next few years, because obviously for logistics reasons and stuff and resources, and they cannot flip the entire thing from one day to the other. So obviously it's going to take time if they decide to make such a change, which they haven't, by the way. But if they did, so in this scenario, I would give them the opportunity to do that, but also I would want to make responsible and held accountable the people within the company and the franchises and the different authorized retailers or whatever, the companies working with them. I need to make the people responsible for the things, these evil things that they've done, the animal abuse and all of that, because someone has to be responsible for all this. Like they have to pay for it, even if they have a change of mind, like the company, because of course the brand is recognizable, the logo, the name, and those assets could be very valuable. If they shift to completely vegan, it could be a great tool for us vegans in this fight against speciesism and animal abuse. And imagine if McDonald's of all companies did this, it would be extremely powerful, and I guess it would have an effect on their competitors, because no one would be wanna be left behind. When a company does something, all the competitors try to emulate that and try to compete with that. So it would create change not only for their company but for all the other fast food places and restaurants and venues and stuff like that. So everyone would be. It would cause somewhat of a ripple effect, I do think, and it could be a very powerful and positive thing for the movement and for the animals, which is the most important thing. And that would be something to consider. But like I said, the humans behind the faceless corporation, the CEOs, the executives, the shareholders, they need to be made accountable for, because they cannot go unscathed for what they've done, because they've knowingly made profit from the suffering and the pain and the hellish nightmare that these innocent sentient animals go through every day, and that cannot go unnoticed and unpunished. That's my take on it. If you have another view or idea, I would like to know about it. Leave it in the comments. And like I always say at the end of my videos, stop hurting animals, start turning Veganese. Till next time.